Welcome to Install from Heap, Episode 17, a Netrunner podcast from Rattlebox Games about jank, deck building, and cyberpunk nonsense. I'm Brendan Riley. Today on Install from Heap, in our special report, we'll talk about holiday characters and their favorite cards. In Executive Boot Camp, we'll tell you how to avoid the Punitive Counterstrike. In the Hacktivist meeting, we'll talk about Core 2 and what kinds of decks we might build out of it. And finally, in Exploratory Romp, we're going to think about what it means to get a gift from a celebrity. Stick around. Exchange of information. Welcome back, Netrunners. I hope that you've been having a pleasant couple weeks. It's now mid-December, and I'm feeling slightly less stressed because I'm at the end of the semester. I still have final projects to grade, but there's a gap here of a couple days while students are finishing those up and turning them in. So I'm doing work, but not quite as much work. Hopefully your holidays are approaching nicely, and your December isn't too cold. Chicago's been very up and down here. It's been kind of cold some days, like really cold, and other days it's been pretty warm. They're actually predicting in the 50s on Thursday of this coming week, so I have a correction to make. In my last episode, I mentioned the Downers Grove Game Store Fair game, and I said that Monday nights are when they play Netrunner, and that's not true. It's Tuesday nights, and I know they just got in the new core set, so I'm itching to get over there and pick up my copy. Speaking of which, Core Set 2 is now out. The revised Core Set is available in time for all of your holiday shopping. How many copies are you going to buy? I think I'm just going to buy one set so I can get the new art, but I don't care enough to buy three, or I don't have enough money to buy three just so that I can have full play sets of the fancy art. You know, I'd like to have one each just to be able to look at them, but if I want to play a full play set of them, I can use my old cards. I'm not too picky about that. The holidays are coming up, so there may be a delay in the next episode. I mentioned this last time. I don't know what my next week is going to look like, but I know that once I get past, say, the 20th, it's going to be very hard for me to record. So we'll see. If I can get an episode recorded next week and put it in the can, then we'll have an episode on the 28th or so. But if I can't get it done, then we won't probably have one until early January. So that's just a heads up that the next episode may be delayed. We'll see. Special report. Today I want to talk about holiday characters and their favorite cards. A year ago, I did a Christmas-themed episode where we did a deck called It's a Wayland Full Life, and we talked about what it would mean to make a deck built around the movie It's a Wonderful Life, thinking about particularly the corporation side. I thought what I'd do this year is talk a little bit about several different holiday movies and think about a couple characters from each and what their favorite Netrunner card probably would be. I'm hoping to get a lot of feedback on this one so that we can hash this out together. So first I just want to play a clip from my absolute favorite Christmas movie, A Miracle on 34th Street.
You said you wanted to see me, Mrs. Walker.
Come right in.
Hello there. Good to see you again.
It's nice to see you.
You're awfully lucky, Mrs. Walker. Lovely little girl you have here.
Thank you. And Susan's the reason I asked you to drop down. She's a little confused, and I thought maybe you could help to straighten her out.
I'll be glad to.
Would you please tell her that you're not really Santa Claus? That there actually is no such person?
Well, I'm sorry to disagree with you, Mrs. Walker, but not only is there such a person, but here I am to prove it.
No. You misunderstand. I want you to tell her the truth. What's your name?
Chris Kringle. I'll bet you're in the first grade.
Second.
I mean your real name.
That is my real name. Second grade?
It's a progressive school.
Oh, it's a progressive school.
Miracle on 34th Street is my favorite Christmas movie, in part because I think it really captures the feel of the modern era, even though it was made in the 40s. It wrestles with the question of the everyday drudgery of modern life versus the sort of spirit of Christmas. If you haven't seen it, the premise is that there's a guy who thinks he's Santa Claus, and some people think he's crazy, and so they have a fight about it. He ends up having to be in a court case about whether he's Santa Claus or not. There's two characters I wanted to point out and see what they like. The first is Doris. She is one of the main characters in the film, and for the time a really interesting woman because she is a single mother. She got divorced from her husband when they were young, and this made her jaded in the movie, so she needs to be, helped by a man to see why she was jaded or whatever. I mean, that part's kind of annoying. So I was thinking Sonny LeBeau is a Doris, which means another day, another paycheck. Seems like Doris's main card, right? The idea that she's working hard, she's making it for her kid, and she's getting by. So I think Doris would like another day, another paycheck. Kris Kringle is clearly a Jackson Howard kind of guy, right? He's giving stuff to everybody. He's spreading the toys, spreading the love. Kris Kringle is Jackson Howard for sure. With regard to It's a Wonderful Life, I covered this a lot last year, but the two characters I'd talk about, if you haven't seen this film, it's about a man who, it's almost not even really a Christmas movie. It's about a man who thinks that his life has been a failure, and so he's on the verge of committing suicide after one major mistake. And he's convinced that his life has in fact made a big difference through a kind of angelic intervention. They've made so many parodies of this movie. You've seen them all, probably. The two characters that I think are worth talking about there are George Bailey, who's the main character. And in the film, he seems like a really nice guy, and he is. But he's also got a kind of socialist streak in him that speaks out for the working man against the wealthy. And I think Edward Kim is somebody that George Bailey would admire because, you know, Edward Kim hates androids, certainly, but he hates androids because they're taking work from regular folk. So I think George Bailey would like Edward Kim. And then Mr. Potter, of course, is the villain of the story, and he is a dyed-in-the-wool capitalist who believes workers don't deserve anything, and they should be saving their money instead of frittering it away. Good thing that's an opinion that's gone away in the modern America. So I think corporate town would be the thing for Mr. Potter. And it's not hard to remember that Pullman and Potter are very close together, and that in George Bailey's vision, Bedford Falls is now called Potterville or Pottertown or something like that. So corporate town is definitely Mr. Potter's jam. Another movie I would point out is How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the classic Dr. Seuss tale. I would prefer to go with the cartoon version, where the song about the Grinch was performed by the man with the best name ever, Thurl Ravenscroft, who also, I believe, was the person who said, "They're great," about Tony the Tiger and Frosted Flakes. But anyway, so in the story of The Grinch Stole Christmas, there's the evil Grinch who wants to take everything from everybody because he hates us. And then there's Cindy Lou Who is a kind of wide-eyed naif that the Grinch is inspired by or thinks is lovely. So the Grinch's favorite card would clearly be reversed accounts, right? He builds up a bunch of incredulity or anger at the town, and then he takes all their stuff. Very reversed accounts like. And Cindy Lou Who, she reminds me of Chaos Theory a bit, and so I think Exploratory Romp would be her card of choice, going on a fun adventure. Especially if you sort of think about the dog as the dinosaur. Yeah, that seems like a good connection to me. Two more. A Christmas Story is the classic American Christmas film that's now shown in a 24-hour loop on TBS from 7 p.m. Christmas Eve till 7 p.m. Christmas Day. It's a story based on a really good book. I believe it's called Jesus Saves All Others Pay Cash by Gene Shepard, who's an American essayist from the 30s and 40s. Or he maybe was writing later, but he grew up in the 30s, in the Great Depression. And he writes about his time growing up in Indiana, and they're excellent essays, and he narrates the film as well. So when that sort of very distinctive voice, that is in fact the author of the book. But I was thinking, so Ralphie, if you haven't seen the film, Ralphie's the boy, and he lusts after a BB gun. So clearly, the unregistered Smith & Wesson is his choice for card. That's the thing he thinks would be best. The old man is his father. It's just called the old man in the stories and in the movie. And we learn that he thinks of himself as quite the car aficionado, and so it seems like the sports hopper would be the old man's favorite choice. It also gets you out of a jam, which the old man uses it. I guess he doesn't get out of a jam. It causes jam for him. So maybe traffic jam for the old man? I don't know, one of the two. Either way, a car for the old man. Finally, I want to talk about A Christmas Carol for a moment. Perhaps the most well-known of the English language Christmas stories. If you read the history of it, it's really interesting. Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol because a lot of British people weren't celebrating Christmas very much, and he thought they should. And so he wrote The Christmas Carol as a way of getting people to think about Christmas in a new light and celebrate it again, to hold Christmas in their heart, as he says. So I thought I would pick a couple characters from A Christmas Carol. First, there's Ebenezer Scrooge, the famous miser who becomes redeemed by the visit from the evil spirits, or the spirits, nonetheless. So it seems, at least before his redemption, scarcity of resources seems like Scrooge's jam. He has his own and doesn't want anyone else to have any, so it seems like a good card for him. The Ghost of Christmas Past, of course, reviews with Scrooge the experiences he had when he was young and helps point out to him the places where he made choices that shape his life today. Same old thing. The card that lets you redo events from your past seems like a good choice. The Ghost of Christmas Present is a ghost that allows him to see what's going on now, and he passes through things without people even seeing that he's there. He visits the present, but he's not there at all. So I was thinking maybe Security Nexus? That's a console that lets you pass through ice as though it isn't even there. And generally, by the time you're running it, you've got enough link that the corp doesn't contest the trace, and you end up as though you weren't even there. Finally, the Ghost of Christmas Future, usually rendered as a death spirit in the old medieval sense of the word, with the Holocaust cloak and the skull face and so on. Usually mute. Seems like Apocalypse is the Ghost of Christmas Future's favorite card. He would like to have everybody dead. Instead, it's just Ebenezer Scrooge. And finally, clearly the card of the day goes to Tiny Tim. Tiny Tim, the famous character who has tuberculosis, perhaps, some sort of limp, and without any money for old Bob Cratchit, Tiny Tim is going to die. But if Ebenezer Scrooge gives him a raise, somehow Tiny Tim is going to live. I guess Victorian medicine is like our medicine. Just if you have enough money, you can survive. And so he's famous for saying, "God bless us, everyone." Here is the Tiny Tim analog from the Bill Murray movie Scrooged, making that same proclamation.
If you believe in this spirit thing, the miracle will happen, and then you'll want it to happen again tomorrow. You won't be one of these bastards who says Christmas is once a year and it's a fraud. It's not. It can happen every day. You just gotta want that feeling. And if you like it and you want it, you'll get greedy for it. You'll want it every day of your life, and it can happen to you. I believe in it now. I believe it's gonna happen to me now. I'm ready for it. Have a Merry Christmas, everybody. Did I forget something, big man?
God bless us, everyone.
Clearly, if Tiny Tim were playing Netrunner, his card of choice would be Peace in Our Time. So what characters did I miss? Which films did I miss? What do you think should be added to this list? I'd love to hear. Join us over on StimHack in the Install from Heap thread. I think that's the best place for us to have these conversations. Executive Boot Camp. So I just finished participation in the Core 2.0 League. Fighting Walloon organized the league on StimHack, and it's been really fun to play against a variety of people. All my opponents were just charming and lovely. It was a lot of fun all around. I did not do very well. Well, okay, I did fine. I guess I don't know what you'd call it. I won half my games. Literally half right down the line. I split every match I played. That's not enough to make the cut. You got to win more than half. But I stayed right in the middle. I was playing Anarch Reyna and Wayland Building a Better World. I lost every game with Reyna, which maybe says either I'm not a very good runner or my Reyna deck was not good. I think both of those is probably true. But I won every game with the Corp, playing my Building a Better World deck. It was mostly about making money and doing Punitive Counterstrike. I also had the Cleaners in there, had a couple snares. It was about killing the runner, mostly. So I was doing Wayland kill. And most of the games I did that. I maybe won one of them by scoring out, but almost every game I won by killing them, either with a snare or with Punitive Counterstrike. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about Punitive Counterstrike. First off, if you're a new player to Netrunner, welcome. Sometimes I will do a segment called Executive Boot Camp, which we're doing right here, which is about talking about techniques in the game. And I'm by no means an expert. I'd say a mediocre player, but I have a lot of fun. And sort of as I learn things, I share them here. So take the value here for what you will. There aren't very many kill cards in the core box. The biggest one is perhaps Punitive Counterstrike. Punitive Counterstrike is of course a card that you pay 3. It's an operation, you pay 3 to play it. It does a trace 5, and if it succeeds, then the runner takes meat damage equal to the value of the agenda points they stole on the last turn. So this is inspired of course by the phrase punitive damages. So what are punitive damages? Lawyer Stephen Kazan has put a series of videos on YouTube. Here is one with him describing punitive damages. Clear content note, I have edited this. If you listen to it, he is much more succinct, well explained, and thorough than what I've said. I've said I've edited this so it's funniest in the context of Netrunner.
We have a concept that we call punitive damages, to punish you for your conduct, to make an example of you for others so that they will learn and avoid that kind of behavior.
In Netrunner, punitive is the response the Corp gives when you steal a agenda. So the way that you kill somebody with Punitive Counterstrike with a core set only is to have 2 or 3 of them on hand to play. Because only one will very rarely kill the runner, unless the runner's dumb enough to only have 2 cards in hand, or something like that. Generally, the way my kills would go is that I would have either 2 punitives in hand, or a punitive and an archive memories, I'd have a lot of money, and then I would let the runner steal, or the runner would steal without my letting them, a 3-point agenda. Most of the kills I got were in that situation. So what could you do against that as the runner to avoid getting into that situation? I've laid out a couple examples here, and some of these depend on cards that are not in the core set, and I understand that the core set limits your ability even more because you don't have these cards if you only have the core set. The first thing you can do is put meat damage protection in your deck. There are a lot of different ways to get meat damage protection. So I think the best meat damage protection against Punitive Counterstrike is going to be Crash Space. It's a criminal asset, gives you recurring credits, but it also lets you trash it to avoid 3 meat damage. That's enough to put off any of the Punitive Counterstrike double hits. You'll still take damage, but you won't die. There's also Citadel Sanctuary, which is another resource that lets you trash it to avoid all meat damage once. There's a card called Sports Hopper, which you can trash to draw 3 cards. So Sports Hopper won't save you. If you only have 2 cards in hand, and you get hit with a 3-point Punitive Counterstrike, you're dead. Sports Hopper doesn't help you. But say you have 5 cards in hand, you get hit with a 3-point Punitive Counterstrike, you're down to 2 cards. You could then trash your Sports Hopper, draw back up to 5, and you'd be safe from the second Punitive Counterstrike. There's another card called I've Had Worse that does the same thing. If you trash it, well, if it gets trashed, then you get to draw 3 cards. Now I actually had one play. This wasn't during the Core 2.0 League, but I did have one game where I was playing, and I was using a punitive kill, and I had a runner who had 4 cards in hand, and I did a 3-point punitive hit, and I hit the 3 cards that were not I've Had Worse, meaning they had 1 card left in hand, and it was the one that would let them draw 3, but I didn't trash it. So then I hit them with the second punitive, and they couldn't do anything. So that was pretty fun. But having I've Had Worse lets you draw 3 cards if it gets trashed. There's another card called Urogniev Mercs, which is a relatively new card, and this one allows you to accumulate points or tokens on it, which then you can spend to avoid meat damage. The main meat damage protection that people used from the first cycle was a card called Plascrete Carapace, which had tokens on it that you would use to avoid meat damage, but that card rotated out, so that's no longer in the pool. But if you play casually with people who use rotated cards, then that would be available to you as well. So meat damage protection is the first line of defense against a Punitive Counterstrike. A lot of times you don't have that. There's not a lot of slots. I will say I never once saw anyone running Crash Space during the Core 2.0 League. To be fair, since I was splitting all my games, I was never at the top. Maybe the top runners were using it, and that's why they were winning and they weren't ending up playing me, because they were always better than I was. But the second way is to stay ahead on credits, and I would actually say that's part of why I lost as a runner, is I often would not run when I should because I wasn't far enough ahead on credits. I was trying to avoid losing to Punitive Counterstrike, because remember, as I said, Punitive Counterstrike, you pay 3 and you do a trace 5, meaning that on balance you're doing a trace 5 for 3 credits. But if the runner has close to the number of credits you do, it's very hard to land 2 of these, because all they have to do is not boost the first one, and then you have to spend all your money kind of boosting it out of the range of them stopping it, and you have to do that twice. So you have to have a lot more money than they do, and it's really hard if the runner is being careful to get ahead of them that far, especially in the core set where there aren't that many transactions. So as the runner, if you stay ahead on credits, that's a great way. Let's say that you're trying to play around it in other ways. In the core set, there's a card called Imp that lets you trash cards instead of stealing them. So there was one game where I thought my opponent probably had Punitive Counterstrike, so I was trying to play around it. So at one point I ran R&D and I found a Cleaners, and instead of stealing it and being stuck maybe getting Punitive Counterstrike, I used Imp to trash it into archives, thinking that at the end of the game, or when I got to the point where I was sure there was enough in the trash, then I would just run trash and steal the Cleaners plus whatever else was in there. That didn't work out. I lost, as always happened with my running during the core set tournament league. But Imp is a way to do that. There are other cards throughout the pool that allow you to force the corp to trash cards. There's a card called Hemorrhage that's in the core set that also makes the corporation trash cards from HQ, but they get to pick which ones they trash. So it's harder to get them to trash agendas, but you could still mess with them without getting stuck stealing until the end of the game. So the other thing about punitive is it's only effective as long as the runner doesn't win by stealing the agenda, right? So once the runner's at, say, 5 points, you can't use Punitive Counterstrike. It's a dead card, because if the runner steals 2 points or 3 points, then they win. As an aside, one of the games I won because I was able to score a cleaners early, which means that every time they take meat damage, they take an extra one. So then I could do the double punitive on a 2-point agenda. So in that game, I won when the runner stole a 2-point agenda, and I was able to double punitive them because they still took 6 damage. That's another way if you're playing, especially core, if you include the cleaners, it becomes even easier to win with that double punitive. Throughout the card pool, there are other cards that force the corporation to trash as well. There's Maw and Bagat are a couple. There's Demolition Run, which is a core set card, which again, that's another one you could use if you think your opponent has a Punitive Counterstrike. You could use Demolition Run to trash the agenda that's installed. Finally, the last couple, don't steal too many things at once. If you steal a 2-point agenda, stop running that turn. Don't steal another one unless you're going to win the game, because it's really hard for them to land 3 Punitive Counterstrikes. And so if you've only stolen 2 points and you'd only get 2 meat damage from 1, then you're safe. You should also not run last click. Running last click can be a really dangerous move because you don't have time to prepare anything if you end up stealing. You also could get hit with a snare or something else that gives you a tag. That's just general good advice to not run last click. It's not hard and fast rule, and I do it sometimes, but just be aware of that. Finally, there are some cards that increase your hand size. One way to avoid having a Punitive Counterstrike be a big deal is just to have more cards in your hand. It's much harder to kill you if you have 7 cards or 8 cards. That said, do keep in mind that there is another card in the card pool called Boom, and the more elaborate Wayland decks will try to land 2 tags on you and then hit you with Boom, which will do 7 meat damage and is much more likely to kill you. There is also the odd agenda called Meteor Mining, which is a 2/5, which is a really stupid number, and I've rarely seen it played, but that will also do 7 meat damage, I think. I'm interested to hear from other players who have been around a while. How do you avoid the Punitive Counterstrike, particularly if you're playing with just a core 2 set? I'd like to have our new players be able to use the advice you give. So what would you say is the key to avoiding getting Punitive Counterstruck, having Punitive do its damage? Let me know in the StimHack forums. Hacktivist Meeting. My challenge for a Hacktivist Meeting in the last episode was for people to post Christmas decks. I got 0 responses. Come on, hacktivists. No, it's okay. I only want you to respond if this is exciting for you. But given that the Core 2 just released, and we may have some new listeners coming into the field who are getting started and trying to figure out what to buy after they buy the Core set, I thought a nice little challenge would be, I'd like to see what's the best deck that someone could put into the Hacktivist Meeting area in the Install from Heap StimHack thread. What's the best deck that you can make using a single Core 2 and 1 data pack? So I want you to think about, if you buy 1 data pack, what's the best deck you can make? As a bonus, let's say that you're trying to make both a runner deck and a corp deck, and you buy 1 data pack and 1 core set. What's the best deck you can make? I'm looking forward to seeing what you have. What I'm going to do, since I certainly will be playing on Jinteki over the break, I'm going to try to play the decks that you put in there and let you know how they go. I don't generally net deck. I don't like to play other people's decks, but I will for this experiment. So anything you put in there before, let's say, the 25th, I will play after the holiday. And I'll talk about it if I don't get an episode out on the 28th. I'll talk about it in the next episode. The episode that I do on the 28th would be recorded sometime next week, so it wouldn't have this in it yet. But I look forward to seeing what you come up with. A single Core 2 plus 1 data pack. Go! Exploratory Romp. For today's Exploratory Romp, I wanted to think about the holidays are coming up, and many people celebrate the holidays by giving gifts to friends and loved ones. And so I thought about the biggest gift in the Netrunner card pool is the celebrity gift. So I wanted to think about that a little bit. So the celebrity gift is an interesting card, right? It clearly does not mean a gift a celebrity gives to someone, right? If you look at it, okay, so celebrity gift is a 3-credit Jinteki operation. It's a double, meaning when you play it, you have to spend an extra click. It says reveal up to 5 cards in HQ to the runner. Gain 2 credits for each card revealed. The flavor text says, when Miranda Rhapsody showed up with a teacup giraffe, suddenly everybody wanted one. The art is by Matt Zillinger, and it shows basically a woman who seems to be some sort of celebrity. You can see paparazzi flashbulbs going off in the background. She's got a cell phone in her hand, as well as like a wire coming out of her arm, but she's carrying a purse with a tiny giraffe sticking out of it. It feels very much like Paris Hilton with a chihuahua, and I think that's what it's meant to evoke. But the idea of her carrying that gift, which then gains money for the information you revealed. This is a weird card. because it's not clear to me how the mechanics have anything to do with the card. But it's not representing a gift the celebrity is giving someone, it's representing a gift the celebrity receives. So I think it's more like one of those gift tents, which reminded me of Vinnie Van Lowe, the sleazy private eye competitor played by Ken Marino in the Veronica Mars movie, had managed to get a lot of secret recordings of celebrities by giving out tablets, free iPads or iPad Lites, and people would leave them in their house and he had access to the cameras. So here's a clip from that movie of James Franco playing himself, trying to figure out words that rhyme with orange, being recorded through this webcam on the gift that he inadvertently brought into his own house.
Orange. You orange. Forange. Gorange. Orange.
So that's funny to me. And right, the idea of giving gifts to a celebrity that way is to promote them, to have people want to buy them, right? It's the whole idea of the influencer. In the example on the card, the idea is that maybe Miranda Rhapsody didn't buy the teacup giraffe herself. Maybe it was given to her, and by showing it off, then everybody else wants one as well. So it's that showing off bit that maybe gets us money. So the idea is you show all the cards in your HQ, and then you gain money because they're very popular now, and everybody wants that. But it's really weird because you're showing it to the runner, and then like, oh man, I have an Ichi 2 in my hand. Why is that popular? I think the mechanics on this card are really messed up, and they don't really fit the theme, which is you give something and everybody wants it, so you make money on it. Well, that part does. When you say it that way, you give something, everybody wants it, so you make money on it. But I don't get why the runner, I don't know. I don't feel, it doesn't feel quite right. The information you're revealing is useful to the runner, but not to everybody. I don't know. Maybe it does fit and I'm being curmudgeonly. That said, I'm going to give it a B because it's not to me obvious how it fits, but I can see some connection. The art is lovely. Matt Zillinger did a great job. I want a teacup giraffe myself. That's my gift to you. Although it's not a fun card to play as Jinteki because you usually don't want to show the runner what you have in your hand. At least I don't. I like to play tricky Jinteki decks, and if they know what I have, it's not as tricky. Well, that wraps up Install from Heap episode 17. If you have suggestions for future topics or comments on the show, I'd love to hear them. We've had a good discussion going on the StimHack forums, particularly in the context of the idea of cyberpunk. Remember that next time, in the next episode, we're going to be talking about the graphic novel Transmetropolitan. So if you haven't read the first volume of that and you want to know what I'm talking about, get it from the library, get it from your local comic shop, order it from Amazon, however you like to read your comics. And we'll talk about it next time. But we've started debating what it means to call something cyberpunk. I think it's been a really interesting discussion so far. I would look forward to hearing your thoughts on it as well, so hop over in the forum. And a couple of us have been using some fancy academic language. Don't let that scare you off. There's a good conversation to be had even if you don't have the names of French philosophers to throw around. You can do that in the StimHack forums under the Install from Heap thread. If you want to email me, you can do so at brendan@rattleboxgames.com, or you can tweet to us at rattleboxgames. Visit our website, rattleboxgames.com, to subscribe to our newsletter or follow the link to our forums on Board Game Geek, where my name is Wombat929. Like I said, most of the discussion about this show happens on the StimHack forums under the Install from Heap thread. My username there is also Wombat929. I'd also always enjoy losing a game of Netrunner to you on Jinteki.net, so if you see me there, pop in and say hello, or let's arrange a game. And pretty much anywhere we're involved with Netrunner, my username is Wombat929. I look forward to meeting you. I'll see you next time. But until then, remember, when all your best cards end up in the trash, you can always install from Heap. Today's media clips were from A Miracle on 34th Street, Scrooged, Stephen Kazan Law on YouTube, and the Veronica Mars movie. See you next time. And we're recording. Okay. Oof. Have a little coffee, and we can start. So first I just want to play a clip from my absolute favorite Netrunner card, or sorry. Oh, I don't like that fan. Let's see if we can get the fan to stop. Just gonna wait a minute. I want the fan to turn off. Nothing I can do. I guess we'll just put up with the fan noise. Hopefully that's not too bad. Okay, where were we?
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.